Hi, I'm Lynn Kettell-Slifer from Health Partners LLC, your functional medicine provider, and today we're going to start our series on a deeper dive into diagnostics. So why are we doing this? I think it's really important that you as a patient understand what your labs are testing and what those results might mean. And unfortunately, I have patient after patient that comes into the office and has never had this explained. So we're going to start today with the CBC, or complete blood count, which is generally part of your annual blood work. So let's just sort of orient ourselves to how the labs work. These are the things that we're testing. These are your results. And over here we have what's called reference range. Now these ranges were developed in a different number of ways, and in functional medicine we do pay attention to reference ranges, but I care as much if you're at the low end or the high end of range, even to the point where you may have been told by your primary, oh, don't worry about it, you're in range. But if you're at the very low end of range and you have previous diagnostics that show you at the low end or lower, out of range, then that's something that we need to pay attention to. So let's start with the categories of what it is we test in the CBC, again, or complete blood count. So we look at your white blood cell count. So that number in this patient is a 4.8, and that's sort of the reference range. So this patient is down more towards the lower end of normal. If you tend to have a high out of range white blood count, that usually indicates an acute infection. So if you've got, food poisoning or something like that, your white count's going to be really high. If your number, however, is low or on the very low end of the range, that could mean that you're not making enough white blood cells or your body's having a hard time keeping up. And that's usually the case if we have chronic infection going on. So what do I do as far as the white blood count? I also go further, and all of these numbers down here give you a better indication of what the different components, the different types of white blood cells are doing. And certain white blood cells may be elevated or low in certain cancers, perhaps in allergic reactions, perhaps in parasitic infections. So these are all things that help us to determine more information on that white blood count. Now let's go to the red blood count. So this is a measure of your red blood cells. And we go down here, and all of these numbers are down to platelets, really tell us the size, the shape of your cells, which gives us an idea of, are you someone that's anemic? Is it an iron deficient anemia, in which case you would have very small red blood cells? Is it a B12 deficient anemia, in which case you would tend to have larger than normal cells? The RDW, or the red cell distribution width, gives us an indication of, are you making a lot of new red cells? Are you making not many new red cells? In which case that also gives us a lot of good information. And then finally, the platelet count. The platelets, think of those as the sticky guys in your blood. If your platelets are low, that means you don't clot as well as the average person. So perhaps if you cut your finger, you may have profuse bleeding versus the person that would scab over very quickly. If your red blood or your platelet count is high, you are probably someone that is hypercoagulable. In other words, you coagulate more than the average person, and then you're at higher risk for things like blood clots, and deep vein thromboses, DVTs that we talk about. So those are all important numbers. As you can see, this CBC, complete blood count, really does give us a lot of good information, and it's an inexpensive test to order. So even if you don't have insurance, it's quite inexpensive and can give us some good information. So hope that was helpful, and look forward to seeing you back for the next round.